May 6th, 2025, I was invited to talk about the IDS at the annual openBIM Poland conference in Warsaw, organized by the Building Smart Poland chapter. So here's my talk. So unfortunately, the next slide worked a lot better in front of a real life audience. But IDS for everybody, every day. You get IDS. In fact, everybody gets an IDS. No more waiting on topics created by BIM coordinators. No more riddles, no more half-baked and incomplete reports and questions. Don't let someone tell you you did a bad job. Let a computer tell you. Let's talk about IDS. So, I'm Menno Makers. I'm just a modeler that loves openBIM. I work for Aons Geloof Architects and I'm a BIMvoice trainer. Now, this is what we do. We design and build architecture. Housing for young people that are ready to buy their first house. For rich people and everybody in between. We build future-proof, circular, and modular. You see, models are a means to build, so they should be perfect. You see, I model in a tool, export that to IFC, upload it to the BIM coordinator, who validates my model and sends me a clash report. I try to fix it, it gets validated again, I get BCF topics again, and again, and again. So modeling is my core business, but actually working together with clients, contractors, and engineers is. Everybody relies on my model. That's why validating your model is so important. You see, BIM coordinators, they work in the federated model. And how they check the geometry for clashes. Not visual, they run checks. Checks based on source and target elements. Elements from a specific entity, enumerations, names, classifications, and properties, you name it. But how can software find a clash between an IFC wall and an IFC distribution system when instead a wall is exported as an IFC building element proxy? Well, no clash. That's perfect. But actually 16. So models need to be exported correctly. And I call this the BIM administration. And it's not that hard. So with IDS, you can validate your model. Now, what is it? Well, I can talk for an hour about that, so I won't. You can check out this masterclass. And if you're unfamiliar with the latest Building Smart standard, I think you will understand through the use cases I'll give you what IDS can do for you. Okay, one slide to explain. IDS is simplified clash control for data. We clash the required information. Now, IDS is perfect for validating single models. You can run your specifications on federated models, but it's easiest to focus on one aspect model at a time. The one you're working on right now. Make sure your model is correct. Now, in preparation of this presentation, we were given some guidelines. openBIM must be at the heart of the presentation. Well, here it is. And should not promote specific brands. Well, this is exactly how I work. I use many different tools to get the job done. And that's openBIM. The freedom to choose the tool you need, using the open standards, because they're interoperable. But that's also exactly why I use different tools, because interoperability is not really there yet. Not all tools can export perfectly. Not all tools use the IDS standard fully. One tool is better for users, the other tool is better, period. None of them is perfect. So I create specifications in 3 different tools. aka is BIM editor, BIM collab, and Excel. I then check the models with BIM collab and Blender Bonsai. All of the tools have different use cases, but the basics are the same. Now let's add some more logos to this slide, right? So in our office, we have 3 authoring tools, 6 tools with IDS capability, 3 ways of communicating. And for setting the requirements, we use the Building Smart Data Dictionary as well. So I think that's openBIM enough, right? Let's look at some use cases. So walls level 1. This is let's start easy. So is everything present in the walls? And of course you can do this with a slab or with a duct segment or any entity you like. So an IDS is a set of specifications, and this first specification filters out all the elements that are of IFC wall. An IFC wall must then be placed on a building story, must have a classification according to the national classification system, NLSFB in our case. It must have a name, several properties, and a material. So when I download this and run the specification in Bonsai, I get a result, which is a web page where I can see how I scored. And not really what we want. 7 out of 17 requirements are missing. But still 81%, not that bad. And here you can see why you should check one model at a time and not the federated model. You see, the walls that failed this test are structural. The walls that passed the test are architectural. So you would understand that the result would be a lot different if you would run these checks on the models separately. Well, time to get it fixed. So I ran the IDS in Bonsai. Now let's create a BCF there, review this in a viewer, fix it in a modeling tool, export it again. Well, you know the drill. And we're done. Everything that we want to see in a wall is present. So, next level. Now that we have it, is it correct? Well, what do you think? Probably not. So, I duplicated the first specification and start adding more information to it to see if we can get a better result. So, we're still looking for walls, but now they need to have the correct enumeration. So this is the list, but polygonal and standard are deprecated, so we don't use them anymore. And do you remember IFC 2x3 with the IFC wall standard case? That's deprecated as well. But you won't find it in this specification. You should make a separate one for that. Now, name. Every element has a name, of course. That's the most basic attribute. And here you could add the syntax that is allowed in your company. In our case, we start with the first two numbers from the NLSB code. So 21 is for outer walls, 22 for inner walls, etc. So we could create a syntax that says, let's start with two numbers, an underscore, then some text, and maybe end with something else. And maybe there's a national standard that you can use. So, in fact, you could create a specification that checks for these specific names, but basically you should create a syntax where you could say, okay, it has to start with this, it has to contain one of these words, stuff like that. You can go very deep, but this is still a level 2 check. Now, let's look at some properties. So fire rating, surface spread of flame, these kinds of properties. These have a limited list of values. And if you would read the IFC schema and with the property fire rating, it says fire rating according to the national regulations, which means there is no list of values set. So you can add your own. And in the Netherlands, we are working on a list of building products where we can actually add the allowed values to the fire rating property. And this is the fire rating property for from the IFC schema. So we can actually add values to another dictionary. And that works really great. But of course, you can just add this yourself manually in your specification. That's no problem. And last but not least, IFC material. Now, this list can be very extensive. So for this level 2 check, I still kept it basic. Now, for materials, for material naming, we also have made a list in the Netherlands. It's naakt, and it means naked. And this is, as is obliged in the BIM world, an acronym. Stands for naam, kenmerk, toepassing, which means name, characteristic, and application. So we're in the BSTD, and as you can see, it has over 2,000 choices. So that's, for this check, still a little bit too much. And also for this, for akka, I don't want to add it there. I think with a bigger list like that, we should use Excel, which I'll show you later on. So here we just say, with these thousands of choices, why don't we start with the name? Every material should at least start with one of these 17 names. So in order to get this, I cannot add this as value after value after value, because it has to start with something, which means I should create a syntax where I use regular expressions. Now, regular expressions is kind of a formula, and in IDS they're called patterns. So you can use a wildcard, like an asterisk, or a list of several choices of something that says it has to end with 0 in this case, or a letter in either case. Now, and when we combine this with Excel, we are in business. So this is the Excel to IDS converter. And if you know Excel, you can use Excel to easily create large specifications. So this is the applicability, the filter, where I search for these entities of these specific classes. And then that is the applicability. Now we're searching for these entities with a attribute name, and the attribute name should contain metal. Now here's how the computer will find it for you. So first, find all the elements in the model. Check their attribute called name. Now, does the name contain the word metal? No? Well, ignore this element. Yes? Well, then it should have a material with a name that begins with one of these metal bands. So, almost perfect. And that's the golden rule for creating IDS. If you create an IDS and test it, make sure you get some mistakes. If you get a 100% score, is your model perfect? Dream on, baby. Your specification is not working. So this Excel seems a bit daunting. You've seen me creating an IDS in Akka, which looks simple enough. There are maybe even simpler tools, and Excel, it's, well, you have to know IDS to actually use this tool. But so what we need actually is user-friendly IDS. So you've seen me create this in Akka and check it in Blender. And that is because it's an XML file. It's machine readable. Exported in one tool, imported into another. Interoperability. But IDS is made to be human readable as well. So how is that done? It's done by tools. So in Akka, you can actually download a Word document. But not every tool is designed to export a document for project managers that never open a BIM model. So it's made visible in modeling software, but this is still not a report. So every tool has its own way of showing the specifications to the user. And then there's this. I mean, who is going to understand an Excel like this? Well, I know you do, but your colleagues who doesn't watch this video, they probably don't. So in order to get this readable and used by architects and project leaders, I added another sheet that contains the information. So this is what people understand. This is what I add, and the project leaders can actually do this and create a specification. They are creating IDS without even knowing that they are. So we can have the project name and number, the site name, the names of the building story, the elevations of those building stories, floor thicknesses of the structural floor, of the topping. We can derive the structural slab level from that. We have the gross height, the net height, which is of course calculated from the gross height minus the structural floors. We have the number of stories, client info, dates, and there are some gray properties that nobody cares about but me. And of course, they flow into the template through all these formulas. And then we can create an IDS with the Excel to IDS converter. So user-friendly is key. How do we get from the back end to the front end? You know, if it doesn't look pretty and if it isn't easy, it won't get used. So Easy is also done by using a platform. There are a lot of them, and we use BIM Collab in our office. And not just for topics, we've been using that since 2014, so over 10 years. But now I can also write and export IDS specifications as well. So before there was IDS, and I still do this, I created smart views, filters, and they're very useful to get a good insight in the model, filtering specific building elements or showing what elements are external or not. Now, just like I checked the wall data, level 1 is everything there, level 2 is everything correct. I can do this with smart views, right? I don't need IDS. Well, let's see. Is the data present? Well, easy enough. Is everything green? No. But I still need to find these elements that are red, where the data is not present. So with IDS, you know how many walls are wrong, how many elements, and not just how many, you also know which ones and what's wrong with it. And not just by one filter, and this is by one filter. In a smart view, you can do this for one property, but not for 6 at a time. And materials. You see, all elements have a material assigned to them. And that's this list. Every color is a different material. But this is just a list of data. It still doesn't tell me if it's correct or not. I still have to visually go through this list. And you guessed it, with IDS, that works. It gives me an element and the requirement and what I did or didn't do. And to fix it, I can easily create a topic from this as well. So, using IDS is the most user-friendly way of validating your model. And then we have clients. Usually contractors that want more. Or they want actually the same data that's already in the common piece sets, but they still want it in their own property sets. Now, this is a list of building execution plans that contain the model requirements in documents that I need to translate into an export file, where if you look closely, and you can read Dutch, over 40% is the duplicates from the IFC schema. But their clients, so will just export that to their custom property set to get the desired result. And of course, for every client, I have a separate export file. And I think this is maybe the best use case for IDS if you're starting to find out what it's about. Someone wants information from a model that you provide. So start with that. Create an IDS to meet client specifications. And find your mistake before they do. Now, last example is not project specific, but something very office specific. So we design big housing blocks, most of them built on top of a parking garage. Therefore, we have a library component that's very versatile, but it's easy to choose the wrong type or change some parameters by accident, right? So in order to check this, I made a separate property set that exports the specific data and dimensions that we can run against the NEN 2443, the parking regulation. So I created a IDS for that. So let's look at one of the specifications. So what you see here are 6 filters that finds the parking spaces. It looks for a covering flooring with a name that contains parking space in Dutch. It looks for the property set that I have created with a specific 90-degree parking angle, a specific parking width, the width of the parking space. Also, if it's a public parking garage or not, or a private parking garage or not. And if I found that, I'm really zooming into some specific parking spaces. And if I found those, then the requirement is there are only 2 properties that I require. The parking space depth should be a specific dimension, and the parking road width should also be a specific dimension. And this is different from most specifications that you will see or create. Usually it's the other way around. Usually you would get one or two filters in your applicability. Search for an IFC wall. That's one. Just get all the walls. And then you get a whole list of specifications, requirements. And here it's the other way around. So that's also possible. So this NEN has 3 tables with 96 rows of data in total. So the example I just showed you was just one of the 96 possibilities in the regulation. So in order to check all parking spaces according to the regulation in our office, in most of our buildings that we use. So that's one check to find out if all the parking properties are exported. And 96 specifications for every line in the table. And yes, this was a lot of work. And I could have done it with Excel, but I did it in BIM Club because that's accessible for everybody. And even though it was a lot of work, because it's for our internal checks, because we use a lot of parking spaces, it was worth the time. So, how will you create IDS every day, starting now, right? At the presentation in Warsaw, I could just say start tomorrow, but you are watching this today and you can start right away. So how will you do it? In a user-friendly tool that already has IDS support and that you maybe already have, or in a free tool that's still user-friendly, have some more options maybe, or maybe in Excel with the export tool, and with an added layer of user-friendliness if you're not the only one creating and using it. But you don't need to create IDS. Not everybody needs to. Of course, one person in your office, in your company needs to do it. And I think most people will start using it. So, same question. How will you use it every day? In the software that you already own and can communicate with the model? Or maybe you just use Bonsai and get an HTML report to see, just to look at the results. And maybe you are using the same openBIM workflow like me. And use every tool for its own quality. Now that doesn't matter who you are and what you do. If you're an architect, engineer, contractor, client, and if your role is a modeler or a project leader or something else, IDS is for everybody.